So we're here with St.Germaine deck. This is our second. This is our second of the seance decks. We're going in order of what I found the least interesting to most interesting. We covered the Rainbow Wizard. Last time, well, not really last time, but the last seal is pretty stubborn. I've struggled in the past with these for some reason. It's a very tight seal on this. But the last thing deck we did was the Rainbow Wizard one, and I was unsure whether I wanted to do this or the Love one. In this one, I like the concept of better, but I think, I don't know, I don't really like their execution on that concept from what I've seen so far. So we'll see, and I guess after we open both, we'll see whether I was right. So I'll start out the coin. Each deck has its own unique coin dedicated. Next, we'll go ahead and open the random pack. I think we've seen all of these so far before. This one's new. The Bet's Sphere, 3 per spell book, from Fort George Island, Florida. Roll around. Pick this beastie up, shake it, and place it anywhere in the arena fatigued. At the start of the next turn, you may hum. If you do, when an opposing caster targets pages you control with spells or potion, this beastie becomes the target of the effect instead until the end of the turn. That's actually a pretty interesting effect. It says one scary one. Hag of Detroit, 4 per spell book. From Detroit. If an opposing caster is younger than 13 years old, you may inflict target opposing beastie with sleep. Sleep type, target awakening beastie is infected with sleep. Sleep terrors. This attack deals plus 10 damage for each beastie in the arena with sleep indicator. This horrible hag enters through the dreams of her victims and leaves them with terrible visions of death. Her mutilated corpse cracks and twists as she possesses back rooms. Reverse foil. We've gotten pretty unlucky with all of our seance product. Martian Bees from Roswell. Hyper-intelligent bite, 15. This attack damaged a beastie vehicle with an aura cost of 5 or less. Awaken that beastie and take control of it until the end of this turn. Mars Stingers, 20. Martian bees were some of the first pilots of UFO vehicles that come from Mars, but due to their temperament, they've been demoted. And for the rare of Casey Jones, you'll hear the sound of his whippoorwill whistle before you see him. His sacrifice to save others during the train collision earned him a fiery spark in the afterlife. Bonaventure Cemetery, Suburban. Arena. At the heart of each turn, the active caster may lose 50 LP to create a bone token. Artifact with the effect, you may declare this artifact as a defender. If any caster controls more than 4 bone tokens, destroy bone tokens until they only control 4. So I feel that wasn't a great pack, but we did at least get to see some that I don't think we've seen thus far. I think we've seen these before. The Gargoyles, 6 per spell book. I think that's full set. That's interesting. I didn't realize she got reprinted. I believe the original version is in Nightfall. I'm not sure if this is mechanically different card. It does share, I believe, the exact same name. Vampire Mercy Brown, 4 per spell book. From Exeter, Rhode Island. This page's attack still plus 20 damage if you're wearing Vampire Fangs or jewelry. Arena. Nameless tokens you control gain something. Vampire's Mark. She has a really great personality once you get to know her. Seen plenty of these stickmen. I believe that one's come up before as well. This one's new. Blood Grimoire. Well, a vial of fake blood. Why, you know. I suppose for legal reasons they wanted to clarify fake, but I think they could go for either. If a vial of seemingly blood is within its eyesight, I like that a lot better. Beasties you control with bite gain the effect. Arena. Damage dealt by this beastie also recovers the same amount of LP to the controller of this beastie. This effect does not stack. Blood Boom. You lose 50 LP. All beastie bloodsuckers gain plus 20 LP until the start of your next turn. The Dark Book of Sanguine Magic. Blood literally oozes between each page, luring all kinds of nearby bloodsuckers to the reader. And those are staples in, I believe, all of the decks. I have to say, I think I wasn't too big of a fan of this particular Dark Aura to begin with, but it is growing on me. And then the face card of this deck, St.Germaine, 1 per spellbook. Date of birth, 1691, GPS Transylvania. Arena. This beastie cannot be targeted by attacks if you control a beastie's bloodsucker. Reshade Darkness. You may contract a beastie bloodsucker or a beastie named Wingok from your limbo. Fresh Blood, 50. If this attack damaged a caster, the next beastie bloodsucker you contract this turn enters the arena awakened. A magical caster with a speciality in alchemy, St. Germaine, has dark and mysterious ties to very old societies, even helped bring the most powerful bloodsucker to the mortal realm. So, looks like I'll have to look that up. Because I wonder if Wingok is from a separate set because it's not actually included in the deck. Oh, no, it is from. Yeah, that's interesting. It is indeed from this set. So I'm surprised it wasn't included, at least one copy of it, since it was, named. And then the sealed other version. And then, so I have one final thing. I don't know, I'm sort of regretting them. I had picked up the face cards from the release decks that had interested me. I had considered actually buying some, but with my experience with them is that it seemed like they've been pretty much all searched, and so I wasn't really wanting to experience that again, especially when there's only really two cards I wanted. Well, not this one, but the next one I'll show you. It was surprisingly expensive. I believe I paid around $10 for it. Which, does look like it's gone down a bit. Only about 8 is what most listings are at now. But which was like quite a sum considering the failed state of the game, but things I did for you. So this one though is Sally and Thunder and Whirlwind. One per spellbook from somewhere in North America. Arena. This beastie belongs to all tribes represented by forest and lightning. Beasties in the arena. Rattlesnake Lasso may target beasties with flight. Get 'em, boys. Target beastie is dealt 20 damage whenever it is dealt damage not from this power until the end of the turn. When this larger-than-life lass isn't making rope out of snakes or outspinning steam mills and other countless feats, she enjoys long walks with her husband, Davy Crockett. And then the surprisingly expensive one is Sarah Good, one per spellbook, from Wenham, Massachusetts. Yeah, Massachusetts. This page's name is Salem Witches in addition to Sarah Good. Contract. If you are wearing a witch hat, search your spellbook and place it into your chapter. Other beasties with witch in their name get plus 30 LP. Coerced arrangement. Choose light or dark. For each page of the selected aura in the arena, this attack deals plus 10 damage. Outsider Mother Witch. Sarah Good did not deserve the hand that fate dealt her, but death grants second chances at vengeance and retribution. that is it for MetaZoo. It's going to pick back up at the Bosch. So we're starting with today family origins and first works from 1474 to 1487. The desire to form an image of an artist person is rarely felt as strongly as in the case of Bosch, or into the humanist poet and painter Dominicus Lampsonius in his preface to a set of 23 portrait engravings of famous Netherlandish painters. Pictorium aliquot celebrium Germaniae inferioris effigies, which reflects Renaissance thinking. A handsome artist must produce a handsome painting, whereas a gloomy and discordant picture can only be the work of an ill-tempered, melancholy individual. Speaking directly to Bosch, Lampsonius also wondered whether the reason his infernal and monstrous creatures looked so real was because he was reproducing them from first-hand experience of the underworld. What is meant by that astonished eye of yours, Bosch, or that pallor in your face, as if you had seen ghosts and the specters of Erebus flittering in front of you? I could believe that the caves of greedy Pluto and the houses of Tartarus lay open to you, seeing as your hand could paint so well whatever the lowest hollows of Avernus contain. Lampsonius's Latin text is reproduced beneath a portrait of Bosch, engraved by Cornelius Cort, after an untraced original. Like the other presumed portraits of the artist, it shows a gaunt man with an almost aesthetic air, who fits the picture of a painter of religious or darkly fanatical subjects, and whose image may therefore equally well be an idealized representation. Irrespective of the fidelity to life these portraits and the authenticity of such psychograms, which were regularly devised over the years that followed the study of numerous documentary sources relating to Bosch's life so far, has revealed nothing extraordinary, nor anything to explain the extraordinary character of his art. For all his later international celebrity and the lasting influence of his pictorial inventions, sources show that Bosch remained closely tied to his birthplace, where he spent most, if not all, of his life. Nothing in the surviving records testifies that he lived anywhere else. As Hieronymus von Aiken, he grew up in Hertogenbosch as part of the Van Aiken family of painters, whose significance extended no further than the local area. Almost no works have come down to us from other artists in the family, who are documented primarily in official records. The Van Aikens had settled in Hertogenbosch in the north of the Duchy of Brabant in 1427 at the latest. Prior to this date, the family is documented between 1404 and 1422 in Nijmegen, 25 miles away in the neighboring Duchy of Guelders. Nijmegen was important at this period from an art historical perspective, as home of the three Limburg brothers, the famous miniaturists, and their uncle Jean Maywell was instrumental into introducing his nephews to aristocratic patrons in France, where he himself was active. Why the Van Aikens relocated is unclear, but for several family members at least, this decision would prove to be the right one. Johannes Thomaszoon von Aiken may be considered the founder of the family of painters of the Van Aikens workshop in Hertogenbosch. He had 5 sons, all of whom became painters: Thomas, Hubert, Gosen, and Antonius, the last of these later becoming the father of Hieronymus. The surviving records indicate that Bosch's grandfather had been the leading painter in Hertogenbosch before the middle of the 15th century. In the accounting year 1430 to 31, His beginning and end fell on 24 June. He and his wife became members of the city's most important society, the illustrious Brotherhood of Our Blessed Lady, which brought together the intellectual, clerical, financial, and political elite of Hertogenbosch. In 1431, John Thomasun von Aiken carried out work on a monstrous and a niche housing of statue of St. Anne, as well as gilding and embellishing professional robes and accoutrements for the fraternity. 4 years later, he repaired the gold chandelier that had fallen down. He was handsomely paid for a fabric painting of St. Mary of Egypt, probably destined for the Brotherhood's chapel. The painting, executed on the fragile medium of unprepared cloth, is one of many such works that have not survived the centuries. Jan Thomas von Aiken also received further commissions for executing and cleaning paintings for the Tafel van de Heilige Geest almshouse in the church of St. John in Hertogenbosch, where many of the vault decorations remain as yet anonymous. The Basque choir features a most interesting wall painting attributed to a member of the Van Aiken workshop of a crucifixion with donors. Which is close in several aspects of its layout to Bosch's later crucifixion with saints and donor. The donor has been identified as Willem Jacobs van Wyck, also known as Vanderwill, who appears in red to the left of the cross. His first wife, Catharina van Driel, who died in 1444, is depicted opposite, accompanied by an inscription calling for remembrance of her soul. She is followed by the donor's second wife and daughters. The mural was painted shortly after the year 1452, the year in which the donor's eldest son took his vows. He appears behind the father, already dressed as a Franciscan friar in a gray habit and sporting a tonsure, before one of Willem's daughters from a second marriage entered the convent of St. Bridget as a nun. It is therefore just possible that the commission was carried out by Bosch's grandfather, who died in 1454. Another possible candidate is his son, Gossen van Aiken, one of Bosch's uncles. Gossen is the only one of the 5 Van Aiken brothers documented as active as a painter for the above-mentioned institutions between 1438 and 1451. It would then be fact to say that over the course of the 15th century, the Van Aiken painter dynasty achieved a certain artistic status by the second generation, which included Bosch's father, was living in solid financial and social circumstances. In 1460 to 61, 2 of Bosch's uncles, Thomas and Jan van Aiken, took part in the annual Passion Play, which was closely associated with the Brotherhood of Our Blessed Lady, to which most of the Van Aikens belonged. From 1462 onwards, Bosch's father, Antonius van Aiken, of whose artistic activities we know almost nothing, was living with his family on the east side of the marketplace alongside numerous other craftsmen, a butcher, a pewterer, a lachenschilder, in a small to medium-sized stone-built house. It was here that Geronimus, familiarly known as Geron or Joan and later famous as Hieronymus, grew up as the 4th of 5 children. And as the 3rd son, Antonius van Aiken and Alide van der Meenen, practically nothing is known of his first 20 years, though we may assume that they were dramatically marked by one event, a devastating fire that ravaged Bosch on 13 June 1463, destroying the parental home in its path. There are, however, a number of documents that shed light on his person and convey an ideal of his social, cultural, and intellectual environment. The name Hieronymus first appears in a deed on 5 April 1474, in which he, his brothers, and his father officially consent to the leasing of land by his sister Katharina. This is evidence that Hieronymus must have already received a relative majority, but not necessarily 24, which in the 15th century had not yet become the official age of adulthood. Bosch's birth can therefore be narrowed down to between 1450 and 1456. The up-and-coming painter is probably first documented in an artistic context in 1475 when he appears as a member of the parental workshop. His father Antonius, accompanied by his sons, went with the 2 provosts and other members of the Brotherhood of Our Blessed Lady to the wine shop of John Mace, where they had a meeting with the highly regarded Utrecht sculptor Adrian van Wessen. Their discussion centered on the design of a new altarpiece that was to replace the current one destroyed in the fire, together with the terms and conditions of the contract. The Brotherhood spent the lavish sum of 25 stuivers on the food and drink, with which the deal was sealed in the usual fashion. Van Wessen delivered the altarpiece at this stage still without a surround in 1477 as per his contract, and was paid an additional bonus of 36 guilders over and above the hefty fee of 350 guilders already agreed. Because his customers were so pleased with his work, the decision to commission the altarpiece from Van Wessen represented a major step towards bringing high-quality art to Hertogenbosch. How highly the sculptor's carved altarpieces were prized can be seen from the fact that for a larger example executed for Delft some 10 years later, he was paid 1,000 guilders, 15 to 20 times more than a master craftsman earned in an entire year. Marriage as a door opener. How long and to what extent Bosch was active in his father's workshop, whether he traveled as a journeyman, at that time not yet an obligatory part of an artist's training, or pursued higher education, are matters we can only guess at. We do, however, know that Bosch's life took a decisive turn with his marriage to Adelaide van der Merwe, the daughter of a wealthy merchant and patrician, and thus a member of a higher social class than his own. This marriage must have taken place at some point between July 1480 and June 1481, since documents bearing these dates respectively show the pair not to be yet married and then as man and wife. It is during exactly this period that Bosch moved out of his parental home, having sold his share to his eldest brother Gosen. Bosch then moved into the house of his wife and set up a workshop there. From now on, he was an independent painter and is described in documents as Malere, Milder, Skilder, or Pictor, but never as the term then used to signify master. It was the normal practice and indeed a stipulation of the various guilds and the municipal council that marriage should coincide with setting up a home and opening a workshop. Adelaide was at least the same age as her husband, since her name appears in the record of a commercial transaction as early as 1471. Along with estates in the country, she brought into the marriage the townhouse in Den Salvator, which the couple moved into no later than 1483. Bosch now, therefore, not only had his own property, but one that stood on the marketplace and near the town hall. His contemporaries would only find themselves in a position to afford their own homes after 1500, and even then, only in less desirable districts. Of this building, now marked 61, Only the sidewalls and cellar are still standing, with the cellar vaults accessible to the public. Through a lead whose parents had died several years earlier, Bosch not only improved his financial status, being now the owner of a house and land, but also his position within society. The Van der Merwe family, also known as Brands, were enterprising merchants. Leed's grandfather had been a notary, lawyer, and the Hertogens Bosch town clerk. And her close relatives included a steward, a canon, and a prior, several nuns, and a priest, and a university student. While his forebears and brothers were first and foremost debtors, through his marriage Bosch became the recipient of payments, both in cash and in kind. Between 1481, the couple sold shares in a farm and 2 parcels of land that lay a little way out of Hertogens Bosch, probably to raise funds to set up the workshop in their household. Following the death of her brother Gorolt in July 1484, Alid inherited the country estate of Ten Roodken in the parish of Oorschot, near Eindhoven, 50 miles south of Hertogens Bosch. This farm also brought the couple further revenue, to which Bosch was granted usufruct for life. At the very same time that Bosch became an independent painter and a full citizen, his path crossed those of 2 representatives of princely families who would facilitate his rise to the rank of Europe's most famous artists, the not then 3-year-old Philip the Handsome, son of Maximilian I and Engelbert II of Nassau, uncle of Henry III of Nassau-Breda. Both came to Hertogens Bosch in May 1481, and the chivalric Order of the Golden Fleece, headed up by the Habsburgs since the fall of the Burgundian Empire a few years earlier, met there for the first and only time. First works. The earliest firm evidence of Bosch's activity as a painter dates from a time when he had already turned 30. Crucifixion with the Saints and Donor, which we've already seen, which was produced in the late 1480s, is considered to be his earliest surviving work. In line with representational tradition, it shows a crucifixion as a donor picture in which the intercession by the saints on the donor's behalf unfolds in a hierarchical manner. At the bottom of the hierarchy to the lower right is the donor kneeling at Christ's feet with his hands folded in prayer, dressed in red and white striped hose, a white shirt, red doublet, black cape, and black cap. Standing close behind him is his patron saint, St. Peter, with the keys to the gates of heaven, gestures towards the donor with his left hand as he looks across to those 2 saints on the opposite side of the cross, recommending his ward to them. St. John the Apostle, Christ's beloved disciple, standing next to the cross, passes on the plea for intercession with a confidential air and calm gesture to the Virgin standing beside him. Her eyes closed in meditation and her head inclined, Christ's mother has already begun to pray in order to intercede with her son on behalf of the picture's donor. The artist has placed the group very close to the front of the picture. Various symbols of death are scattered about, including bones, a skull, tree stumps carrying birds, probably clothes, all of which allude to Golgotha. In the background, a gently rolling green landscape traversed by paths and walkers, some of them exceptionally small, leads the eye to the horizon, where a city seemingly of Bosch's era is seen in silhouette. A number of trees in the middle ground serve either to interrupt or frame the view. Visual accents are provided by a complex of buildings in the right edge of the composition and a post mill on the left. Although we know nothing of the location for which the crucifixion with saints and donor was originally conceived and its specific function within that context, we can be sure that with its portrayal of intercession, it fulfilled the primary function of religious images, to secure the salvation of the donor's soul, with it a place in paradise. Paintings of this kind were consequently often seen as part of a larger scale endowment that included the regular celebration of requiem masses. The donor was evidently a public official who wielded administrative and law enforcement powers, as indicated by his style of dress and the sword protruding from beneath his short cape. Bosch probably looked back in his crucifixion to the wall painting of the same subject executed by the Van Aken family workshop, as a number of authors have suggested. Characteristic features of the present panel that are also found in the earlier mural include the softness, restrained gestures and expressions, the Virgin's pose, and certain details of the representation of Christ, which do not overlap but fuse to form an almond-shaped outline. The crucifixion is one of the most conventional works in Bosch's oeuvre and reveals his roots. It not only testifies to the fact they took up and used local compositions, it also allows us a first glimpse of what distinguished his personal style from that of other painters of his day, in particular those in the Low Countries. The ultimate yardstick for comparison in this regard is Roger van der Wilden, whose works exerted a profound influence upon artists across the whole of Central Europe. One of van der Weiden's very widely known crucifixion compositions probably also served as basis. If we compare these last two works with Roger's treatment of the theme in Vienna, we can see that all three paintings show an emaciated, almost beardless Christ. With head drooping to the left and thin extremities and legs that bend at the knee to the left. Bosch's crucifixion, however, is far less illusionistic in its overall treatment and emotionally far less intense. His painting technique employs fewer contours in rendering the muscles and a soft dissolving outline, while the saints are statue-like and none of those present exhibits any outward show of emotion at Christ's death. Christ likewise appears as a less dramatic figure. Nor do we find Bosch's saints shedding any of the tears seen in some of Roger's paintings. Their strained dramaturgy and momentality are characteristics found throughout Bosch's oeuvre. They are fundamental traits of his personal style. Bosch's recourse to a model for his crucifixion typifies the copying through which apprentices learn their trade. Which other elements of Bosch's art were sourced from the repertoire of the Van Aken workshops is yet to be established. The family of painters might well have assembled a substantial body of figural and compositional designs over the generations. Bosch could have found further inspiration in the stone and wood carvings inside St.Germaine, such as those on the choir stalls in the illuminated manuscripts housed in convent libraries, in the work of Adrian van Vessel, and in many other examples now unknown. Studies of the iconography of Bosch's works have revealed the huge breadth and variety of the visual media upon which he drew. Some of these exhibit no more than an analogous relationship with his works, while others clearly provided models and sources of inspiration. In addition to the above-mentioned works, these also included engravings and woodcuts. Beyond this, however, many of Bosch's themes have no tradition in the visual arts at all. They are to be found rather in contemporary literary sources. Bosch, yes, was not at least a keen-eyed observer of the world around him. The genre-like realism of everyday objects and patterns of behavior in many of his pictures makes them a source of delight for cultural historians, folklorists, and ethnologists. In the Hell panel of the Garden of Earthly Delights, the schematic outlines of buildings can be seen rising in the distant background. They are bathed in a fiery glow that tinges the surface of the water's red. Streams of people, accompanied by devils or demons, become lost to sight in the darkness, and through their own diminutive scale has the painter here processed his impressions of the blaze. So I wasn't quite sure. I think this one that we've been looking at is by him because there's no listed artist. So that should mean it's his. Let's see. It's a little. We are like pretty much out of time. Well, I think we've gotten most of what we can out of that anyways. So we will not tomorrow, but on Friday we will pick up with part two, his social and artistic ascent. Tomorrow we will be back with more Mothership.